Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Oh, Christmas in the stars, Christmas in the stars. What a very Merry Christmas it will be. Yeah, Christmas in the stars, Christmas with Rebel Force Radio. This week's show for Friday, December 21st, 2018. Our last show of the year, unless the Episode 9 teaser trailer would happen to debut. And by the way, best laid plans, it was supposed to happen today. All the rumors were pointing to today as we record this show, Wednesday, December 19th. Everyone was saying, and by everyone I'm looking at you, Collider, I'm looking at you, IO9, looking at you, all of these websites that were saying, and even some of the mainstream sites were picking it up, saying, okay, well, all signs point to some sort of announcement or a trailer drop today, and nothing. Not a title, not a trailer, nothing. Well, not nothing. You got Rebel Force Radio. We were not going to leave you behind or disappointed. You want some Star Wars content on your week before Christmas? We're going to give it to you. And, of course, joining me in giving all that and so much more, my good friend and yours from Chicago, our elf on the shelf, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. We want our trailer. We want it swiftly. We want our trailer swift. Taylor Swift.
I thought you were going for like a protest, like a march, like we want our trailer. We want it swiftly. We want our trailer, like that kind of thing.
Yes, and the grand marshal of that march would be Taylor Swift. So we would, it would be the Trailer Swift March with Taylor Swift.
She a Star Wars fan? She ever talked about that?
I don't know. Now, of course, our lone connection to her would be Kyle Newman, who directed one of her videos.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And
that's
Taylor
right.
happens to be the godmother of Kyle's second son, Leo. So that's a little-known bit of trivia there.
Well, maybe he can fill us in on whether or not Taylor's a Star Wars fan. But
I've never heard any mention of Taylor Swift and Star Wars in the same sentence.
Yeah.
But Trailer Swift with Taylor Swift, let's make it happen.
Maybe we'll get a rumor that she's going to show up, a cameo, one of those sort of pop culture cameos that.
Well, isn't Ed Sheeran going to be in?
I'm glad you said that because I was like, gosh, I swear there was just another one of those NSYNC style rumors,
right?
That he was going to be, in it. Yeah, Ed Sheeran. Now Daniel Craig, that one was very visible and very. I mean, if you're a fan of Daniel Craig, and I'm a bit of I got to say, I'm a big fan of Daniel Craig. I maybe too much of a fan.
You?
Of Daniel Craig.
I never do this. Are you a Bond fan? Do you like 007 films? I didn't know this.
I do. And Daniel Craig's my favorite Bond. I think I'm ready to call it. I've always been so loyal to Sean Connery, but I think I'm ready to officially call it that now that Daniel is entering probably the September of his years as James Bond, going into a final Bond film here in the next year, that he's my favorite Bond.
Well, that's good to know. That's something we should talk about on Bondcast if we ever get around to doing an episode.
wait a minute, you can't discount the Star Wars connection with Daniel Craig.
I'll tighten those restraints. Scavenger scum.
Did they ever name that trooper? Did they name the trooper like TK-007 or something like clever like that?
No, I never heard anything about that, but that would be clever. Name of Daniel Craig's stormtrooper.
Because that's probably one of the most
Jason,
obvious. Is it TK-007?
Daniel Craig's First Order stormtrooper in Star Wars The Force Awakens was given the designation JB-007.
JB-007. Oh, they're not TKs in the sequel trilogy era, are they?
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that because, of course, John Boyega was Finn, FN-2187.
Right.
So no TK there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a First Order designation. JB-007.
JB. Yeah. But I'm trying to think, when you look back at Star Wars cameos, there's not a lot of them, right? I mean, there's not a lot of those kind of, this celeb just wants to be in a Star Wars movie. Now, famously, Jim, you've brought up on the show before that Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi wanted to be in Empire, right? Does this go back to Empire or was it? Yeah, it must have been Empire.
This is interesting. I don't know about Dan, but John Belushi specifically was lobbying Carrie Fisher while they were shooting The Blues Brothers in Chicago back in the late 70s. Mm-hmm. He was lobbying her to go to George Lucas and say, book John Belushi and put him in the next Star Wars film. Belushi wanted to be in Return of the Jedi. And
so it was definitely Jedi then, because I don't remember the year that they would have been filming Blues Brothers.
It's like 79, I would assume.
79. So
Blues
going
Brothers
into
came out in 80.
Okay. So they might have already wrapped Empire by that point.
Oh, for sure. Well, Carrie was in the Blues Brothers.
Well, no, I know that, but I'm saying, so if they're filming in 79, she would have filmed Blues Brothers and Empire in the same year.
Yeah, Empire was shot in 78, wasn't it? Didn't they shoot that
maybe 78, 79.
Summer 78.
To get it out in 80, yeah.
And then just kept shooting all the way through. But, yeah, so Belushi wanted to be in Jedi. So, that makes you think, well, what character would John Belushi play in Return of the Jedi if George Lucas took the bait? And the answer is so clear. It's so obvious. Belushi would have been perfect as the Rancor Keeper.
Malakili.
Oh, Malakili, you would have been great with the crying and all that. It's a comedic moment. John was big, and he kind of looked like Malakili a little bit.
Yeah. Malakili bee. He was a killer bee.
Oh, yeah. They have him wearing a bee suit. That would take me out of it.
But that never happened, right? That never happened. The NSYNC cameo that was rumored going into Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, that never happened. The Daniel Craig cameo, I remember when it was being talked about, and we talked about it on the show and said, that'll be like one of those NSYNC things. It'll never happen, or you'll never know it's him. And sure enough, boy, there we are sitting in the theater, and that voice comes on, and it was unmistakable. I mean, I knew from the moment he opened his mouth.
You knew from the moment he took a step.
Yeah, you could tell he's got to walk. Yeah, he's got a certain walk. But I'm trying to think, is that the only kind of real pop culture-y type Star Wars cameo, at least in any of the films?
That's a good question. Because outside of the core cast, you had primarily London extra actors filling out most of the roles that have then just become so famous.
Now, who's the guy that Mark Hamill loves from The Young Ones and a couple other British sitcoms that was in The Last Jedi? In fact, there's a photo that just recently Mark started pushing around Twitter. I can't think of the guy's name. Funny guy. British comedian, actor, The Young Ones, classic British sitcom. And, of course, Mark being the absolute Anglophile that he is, particularly with British comedy, British entertainment, he just lost it when he found out that he was actually on the set. So that might qualify, though. I think the guy was just, getting some work. I don't think it was like, oh, we've got to have this guy because he is who he is. Now, you might consider, who's the friend of JJ that shows up in all his movies?
Well, it was Simon frickin' Pegg.
Well, Simon friggin' Pegg.
Oh, you're talking about Greg Grunberg.
Greg Grunberg. Now, that might be considered a cameo.
Uh-huh.
You know, kind of a pop culture-y cameo.
Yeah, he's not on the level of someone like a Daniel Craig.
Yeah, that's true.
By the way, the guy you're thinking of, that Mark Hamill was a big fan of, is a guy named Adrian Edmondson.
Yeah.
All right, and he's in that show that you enjoy so much, the Young Ones.
Oh my God, you never watched that? That used to be on.
I never watched.
I think it was either VH1 or MTV used to play that in like the late '80s. The reruns of that. God, that was a funny show.
So he was Captain Peavy in Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So he was one of those. Is he the tooling with you, sir? Is that who's Captain Peavy?
I thought he was the guy. I thought Peavy was the guy that said we should have done it blasted 5 minutes ago or whatever it was, when he says when he finally gets the order that he wants from Hux and to engage or something, and he ticked off that they should have engaged earlier or something like that. But
he's definitely on the bridge with Hux during. I think he's the tooling with you, sir.
He might be tooling.
Yeah, he's tooling with you, definitely. Well, that didn't come out the way I meant it to. Captain Peavy.
I believe he's tooling with you, sir.
About his mother.
But anyway, I was just trying to think if there were any of these types of cameos in Star Wars. And now, what I love about this is you and I are going to be sitting here racking our brains, and then we'll open up our email on Saturday morning, and it'll just be full of corrections and tons of examples that obviously the listeners will have.
No, I'm cheating. I got the Google open. So,
oh, you do?
Yeah.
Did you do Star Wars cameos?
No, I'm just. Well, I will though. Should I?
I think you should. Star Wars cameos.
Star Wars cameos.
Now, look. So spare your Facebook comments.
Oh, this is fantastic.
We're not counting episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels where we're just talking about the films at this point. But
all right, you want a few? Yeah, there's a few articles here.
Okay,
there's a few articles here, but some big ones: Prince William and Prince Harry.
Did that happen?
I definitely know they were on the set.
Yes,
and they were in wardrobe, but whether or not they're actually visible in the film is. In the final film, The Last Jedi, they may have been stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Hardy was a stormtrooper in a cut scene.
That I remember. Yep.
Cut scene,
mm-hmm.
And a scene that really needed to be cut from the film, with this jive talking stormtrooper who's on the turbo lift, and he recognizes Finn, and it's a cumbersome moment. I mean, thank God it got excised from the final film. Joseph Gordon-Levitt in The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah. Well, they came from up there and just, right. Now, I never would have guessed that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, he did like the hayseed hick accent there pretty well, but.
The guy who played the Master Codebreaker, Justin Theroux, is known to people who watch a show called The Leftovers.
Oh, he was the Codebreaker with the flower.
Right. Red palm bloom.
Yeah, right.
So this is primarily a list from that crazy Last Jedi movie.
Yeah, well, I would assume that most of the bulk of these are going to be in the sequel trilogy. You didn't see a lot of that going on in the prequels. Oh, you could count E.T. Throw him.
Yeah, I would. I definitely would. Looking at another list,
mm-hmm.
and Daniel Craig is number one. Richard Armitage in The Phantom Menace. Who is Richard? He's not exactly an A-lister, is he? He was
not really.
The leader of the dwarves in Peter Jackson's Hobbit prequel trilogy. So if you were a big fan of that, you would have recognized him in The Phantom Menace. He was a Naboo pilot. Well, of course, George Lucas himself made a cameo appearance.
That's a good one. That's fair. And the whole Lucas family there. Jet was in there, and Amanda, and the other one.
Here's a great cameo, known better for being behind the camera than in front of it, but absolutely memorable for her acting debut in Godfather 3.
Oh, Sofia Coppola, yes!
Yeah.
Sofia Coppola, who's a very accomplished director, and, someone who grew up, obviously, knowing, I'm guessing Uncle George is probably what she calls him. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
That's what I call him, for crying out loud.
Now, that's a good one as a cameo. I'm thinking of the other handmaiden, Keira Knightley, but she wasn't real well known at that point. She hadn't done the Pirates movie, so I wouldn't count that as a cameo, but she does show up in there.
Yes, I mean, it wouldn't be leaning on her pop culture reputation at that time. She got the gig because she was a right match for Natalie Portman.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You got a couple of guys in Kanji Club who are well known for the movies The Raid and The Raid 2, which are just, I mean, for my book, those Raid movies have the most amazing fight choreography, martial arts fight choreography in any movie ever. I mean,
I remember
just absolute brutal fight scenes.
I remember sitting here doing the show, and obviously The Force Awakens was in production, and we were getting these rumors and these reports of some of the people that were going to show up in this movie. I remember you saying that, Jim. You're like, oh, man, if these guys are doing martial arts moves and stuff in there, you've got to look out for this. This is going to be off the hook.
Right.
But they didn't really do any of that.
No,
they just
didn't.
Ran away from the Raftars, screaming and stuff.
That was about it. Yeah. Heck, we could have done that.
They have our jobs.
Took
our careers.
Another great cameo. Again, not banking on any sort of pop culture value that he had at the time, but somebody who certainly became known to everyone as his role as Cliff Clavin in Cheers. John Ratzenberger was in The Empire Strikes Back. Right? Treat Williams was in The Empire Strikes Back.
Who was Treat Williams? Was he just...
He was a rebel. He was a Hoth rebel. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, inconsequential cameo, essentially an extra.
Yeah.
But just being in the right place at the right time at that point in his career to land in a Star Wars movie. Again, these guys weren't being booked for the film based on their A-list success. Well, a guy like Daniel Craig, absolutely. He just says, I want to be a stormtrooper. And it's like,
well, I think they were the production of Spectre and Force Awakens butted up against each other.
It's only natural. If you're going to be shooting a Star Wars movie at Pinewood Studios, you're damn right the current 007 is going to be a stormtrooper if he wants to be. There's probably legal paperwork for that.
Well, that's fun. I mean, this is, this is what a lot of this episode is going to be this week. Of course, the holidays are a great time to get nostalgic and look back. And one of the things we'll be doing is taking a look at the year that was 2018. What a year it was for Star Wars and for Star Wars fans all around the world. We had the home video release of Episode 8, The Last Jedi. We had a theatrical release of Solo, A Star Wars Story. Those are two big moments. I don't think we've ever seen a home video release and a theatrical release of a major motion picture, Star Wars motion picture, all in the same year. I mean, that's just absolutely crazy to think about. So anyway, we're glad that you're here. So happy to be with you here on our special Christmas episode of Rebel Force Radio.
Tom King, this is the voice of Yoda, wishing you a Merry Christmas, I am. Yes.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hope that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads.
Hello, this is Nika Futterman, and I play a Sage Ventress. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Hey, before we get into the rest of the program, I do want to take a moment and mark the passing of Penny Marshall. You're saying, hey, this is a Star Wars podcast. What are you talking about Laverne for? Well, I have just so many memories watching Laverne and Shirley, and just the older I got, the more I just marveled at what a comedic talent Penny Marshall was. And not just her as a performer on shows like Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days, but a fabulous director, A League of Their Own, one of my all-time favorite movies, as well as Big. She's just an incredible talent. The Star Wars connection is that she actually was very, very close personal friends with the late Carrie Fisher. And it's kind of a fun story that it was Lorne Michaels, longtime producer of Saturday Night Live, who decided that Carrie and Penny would get along pretty well. So at the time, Carrie Fisher was married to Paul Simon. Penny Marshall was married to Rob Reiner. And so the two of them just became fast friends. In fact, they ended up having an annual tradition where they would throw a joint birthday party for each other. And that would happen every year in December. And it was, for the longest time, it became the place to be. Jack Nicholson, Robin Williams, Angelica Houston, even David Bowie once crashed the party. Everybody wanted to be at Penny and Carrie's joint birthday party in December. Now, when Carrie passed away, we played a clip here on Rebel Force Radio of an appearance that she made on Laverne and Shirley. And it happened to be an episode that also guest starred the legendary Hugh Hefner. And in the episode, you had Penny Marshall as Laverne DeFazio auditioning to be a Playboy bunny.
Yeah.
And Carrie was there as well. Both of them looking fabulous in the iconic bunny suits. And it's just it's a brilliant scene. I mean, what a absolutely, you hate to use that word genius because it's used so much, but I think Penny Marshall as a physical comedian was just genius. Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. She was great. I mean, Tuesday nights, Happy Days at 7 o'clock, rolling into Laverne and Shirley at 7:30. It was must-see TV back then. So we're going to play that clip of Carrie and Penny, the classic great friends that they were. And here they are in Laverne and Shirley trying to do the best that they can, posing as Playboy bunnies. You'll actually hear Carrie Fisher sing in here, and she does a pretty darn good job. So everyone listen to this, hoist up a milk and Pepsi or whatever, a shots beer,
Shots beer, milk, Pepsi, absolutely.
And toast to the great Penny Marshall.
Please tell me, how tight do these things have to be before they're legally declared skin? I can't breathe in this.
Me neither. Isn't it great? Yeah.
Now, Kathy may not make the best bunny, but you're making a big mistake, because she can sing like crazy. You can sing for him.
Don't scare. Help me, then. You help me.
I'll help you. Okay, hit it!
There's not a man today who's gonna take me away from my guy. What you say? There's not a man today who's gonna take me away from my guy.
Tell him again.
There's not a man today who could take me away from my guy.
Hey, Jason and Jimmy. This is Ashley, and I'm calling from New Boston, Texas. I discovered Rebel Force Radio about 6 months ago, so I looked it up, and I think I binge listened to about 30 episodes of RFR that week, and I haven't missed an episode since then. But every once in a while, I'll go back to the very early days of RFR and listen to an occasional episode. Tonight, I was listening to the September 22nd, 2013 episode called Ashley Eckstein's Birthday Bash. And I wondered if Jimmy Mack realized that he was a prophet. You guys were talking with Ashley about her accessibility to the fans and the community of support for female fans that she had created through her website. And Jimmy posed this question at about the 1 hour, 18-minute mark. He said, What's it like for you to have an outlet like Her Universe, where you get to meet all these people and share a similar passion and have a lot of stories to tell when they come to you? You sort of seem to be this center, this fulcrum for their stories, and it gets out there through your website. And I just about spewed my tea everywhere when I heard him say that. And I looked it up, and this was more than a year prior to the premiere of Star Wars Rebels. So I can't help but wonder if Ashley already knew what was in store for Ahsoka. And did Jimmy Mack have an insider scoop and slip everyone a little Easter egg? If not, did he ever receive credit for giving Ahsoka her code name? But thanks for all the great content you guys put out every week. I really don't have anyone else to geek out about Star Wars with, so I really enjoy listening to you guys, and I always look forward to new episodes.
Well, first of all, it is absolutely our pleasure to be your remote geek out crew here at Rebel Force Radio. So, Ashley, anytime you want to geek out, just turn on Rebel Force Radio. This kind of blows me away a little bit because I know what we're going to talk about next. There was another pretty famous Jimmy Mack prediction that did come true. This one I don't remember, or didn't remember, until Ashley's voicemail. Listening to it, it all started kind of flowing back. I remember that episode we did where it was Ashley's birthday. We had various guests popping on, and obviously giving Ashley a lot of credit, which we have done a lot of through the years, for being someone who was quite the bridge builder for all different types of Star Wars fans. And that's something that we highlighted very heavily on our show. But actually, Jim, you coming out and calling Ashley a fulcrum a year before?
This is weird. This is weird. Now, listen, I find it very interesting because no one has brought this up to me before. Now, I'll get to, there's another reference that I'm going to get to shortly, and that one I was familiar with. But this one, when it was brought up to me in the voicemail, I was like, wow, I don't remember this. So I was pretty excited to actually go back and find the moment. And thank you to Ashley on the RFR voicemail hotline. She gave me the exact time and location of the audio. So why don't we go ahead and play that? This is a year before Rebels debuted, and I call Ashley a fulcrum.
With all the exciting things coming out with Rebels and all the movies and other things that can't be talked about yet, lots of great things in the works. So I definitely do not think the fans will be disappointed.
What's that like for you to have an outlet like Her Universe where you get to meet all these people who share a similar passion and have a lot of stories to tell, and they come to you and you seem to be sort of this center, this fulcrum for their stories?
There it is. There it is.
So I called her fulcrum, and that was a year before Rebels debuted. Mm-hmm. So that's wild. That one I never knew about. There was another one, though. I mean, another weird moment. Oh, by the way, with me calling Ashley fulcrum, I have achieved the level of prophet.
Prophet.
Like, if this couldn't get any crazier, that's not the only time I actually connected Ashley and Ahsoka with the fulcrum title. Here's an email from Daniel, who says, I was listening to some older episodes, and I noticed that Jimmy Mack predicted the future. In the episode Clone Wars Declassified, The Wrong Jedi, posted on March 7th, 2013, Paul Bateman is talking about how he hopes that Ahsoka will have a big impact on the story. Jimmy Mack then replies by referring to Ahsoka as a necessary fulcrum. This was 13 days before Rebels was even announced. So well done for telling the future. So let's hear that clip.
Oh, man.
By the time we get to Return of the Jedi, that maybe things could not have worked out the way they worked out without her, you know?
Wow, so she was like a linchpin in many ways. She was a necessary fulcrum for everything to work the way it was supposed to work.
That would be nice.
Huh. Crazy. So I called
Amazing.
Ahsoka a Fulcrum, and I called Ashley a Fulcrum before any of that ever came to light on Star Wars Rebels.
Fulcrum. Ahsoka. My name is Ahsoka Tano.
Meanwhile, yeah, Fulcrum sounds pretty cool. Let's go with that. Yeah, Jimmy Mac. Yeah.
He drives in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, Ashley on the voicemail asked if I ever received any credit, and the answer is no. No credit. But I mean, come on. Let's not be so arrogant.
Credit.
To think
credits.
I mean, let's not be so arrogant just to think that, me talking out of my butt on a Star Wars podcast is going to get me any sort of credit, We could take it to arbitration, though. And
yeah, can you imagine the People's Court? James McInerney, back on March 7th, 2013.
I'd be all like, me so representing myself. That'd be fun.
Oh, my gosh. But that's
one.
not the only time.
That's
not the only
one.
time. Yep.
We have another RFR prediction that did come true. Mm-hmm. And we've made reference to this a lot, but I don't think I ever actually went back and dug up the sound. But according to William Millay, we actually predicted who the next Fulcrum would be in an episode of Rebels Declassified for the Vision of Hope first season episode of Star Wars Rebels. I predicted Kallus would flip sides. He would become a rebel. I didn't know when. I didn't know how. But I called that in season 1. And Kallus didn't jump sides until season 4, I think, right? I mean, we were waiting for it.
Maybe 3. I think he did in 3, and then he came back in 4, with the hair.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think he ended the series with the hair.
So William Millay says Jimmy predicted Kallus's turn to the Rebels in a season 1 episode of Rebels Declassified. It's the Rebels Declassified episode of Vision of Hope. This was the episode with Brent Spiner's character, Gail Travis. Yeah. Right? Jimmy calls it by stating if there ever was a character to turn rebel, it would be Kallus. Awesome prediction. Well, thanks, William. So I actually went back and dug up the audio just to hear it for myself. I remember thinking it and feeling it, but never actually went back to track down where that actual prediction happened. But here it is in our 10th episode of Rebels Declassified. So about mid-season, right in the middle of season 1, I started to somehow feel a tremor in the force about Kallus.
I feel like there's something underneath the surface with Kallus. And if there's ever a character that I think could turn on the Empire, it would be Kallus. And so I'm curious to see if his blind ambition might get a little bit of clarity as his character grows throughout the series. Could he become an eventual future rebel? How cool would that be? What a huge coup that would be for the rebellion to be able to make Kallus defect. I know nobody's talked about it, and I'm happy to be the first one to do that. That's a little prediction I'm making here on the show. Agent Kallus will defect to the rebellion. When? I don't know, but I have a feeling.
Listen to me. I am Fulcrum.
Yeah, right. You want us to believe that?
By the light of Lothal's moons.
The code phrase. He's Fulcrum?
Man, I'm freaking out.
That's awesome.
That is crazy.
I love it.
That is crazy. That one, like I said, that one's pretty fresh in my memory. The Ashley / Ahsoka as a Fulcrum, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But how cool. So thank you so much, Ashley, William Millay, Daniel, for bringing those up. Those are really fun to listen to.
Yes.
And Jim, I know one of your projects, as if you needed another project, is actually going back and starting with the Clone Wars Declassified and all of our roundtable looks at Clone Wars episodes. You're cleaning those up and re-releasing those out for people to enjoy now.
Yeah, you could get them only if you're a member of the Rebel Force Radio Patreon community in the RFR Rewind tier. So that's where you want to sign up, and you'll be getting episodes of Clone Wars Declassified remastered, along with spin-off show we have called The Filoni Files, where we're compiling every Dave Filoni interview we ever did and just making it very accessible for you guys. A lot of this stuff, I don't even think you can really find it online anymore. Some highlights from the Filoni Files are now landing on our YouTube channel, and we're going to be doing a lot more with our YouTube channel come 2019. But for now, you can get all kind of great highlights from past Rebel Force Radio episodes and highlights from the Filoni Files. And, of course, you can get the weekly shows there, too. Oh, and the Christmas music specials. There's a lot happening on YouTube right now. So if that's your preferred method of getting Star Wars entertainment is YouTube, please dive right in. It's all about trying to make this stuff easily accessible to not only us, but to you guys. So, there have been times I'm digging around looking for something specific. So it's going to be great to have it all nice and organized and available for everyone to look at on YouTube.
If I may, I watch so much YouTube with my daughter, so I've always wanted to say this. So remember to hit that subscribe button and smash that like button.
Do it.
Rebel Force Radio on, on YouTube.
Smash it, like it, lick it, whatever you need to do.
Oh, man.
Hey there, this is Ashley Eckstein. I'm the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Chia.
It's the George Lucas Chia Pet.
Move over, Barack Obama Chia Pet.
Just add the magic Chia Pet seeds and watch it grow.
Wow, look at how bushy his beard is.
Chia.
With the new George Lucas Chia Pet, I have as much green on my head as I have in my wallet.
Just add the magic Chia Pet seeds and watch it grow.
Chia.
Check out that fro.
Chia.
Fun for all ages.
I'm going to use this for my science project at school. It's sure to be at first place.
Revolutionizing filmmaking and home gardening.
That head is greener than a doorbag.
Chia.
And be sure to pick up Darth Chia and Chewbacca.
GL.
It's the George Lucas Chia Pet.
Chia.
I look pretty good with a green fro.
Hey, boys and girls, just in time for Christmas, it's the Star Wars Christmas album. Order now and you'll get songs like Yoda's Joy to the Universe.
Joy to the universe, the Death Star's blown up, and now we all are free.
The galaxy is listening.
Well, and it just wouldn't be a holiday episode of Rebel Force Radio if we didn't remind you of your obligation, your duty, each and every year as we say goodbye to the old year and say hello to the new year, to blow up the Death Star at midnight. And last year, I think it was last year, Jim.
Yeah.
That we happened to be doing this together. You were at your place. I'm at my place. I decided to do this for the first time last year. And I asked my daughter if she wanted to stay up with me to midnight. It was the first year she got to stay up to see the, well, not the ball drop, but see the Death Star explode. It's the first time I ever did it. And we were sort of texting back and forth. And you happened to be recording video at the moment that it struck midnight, the Death Star blew up, and that video, I do have it. Speaking of cameos, I do have a little cameo in there because I'm texting you right at the moment when the Death Star blew up. But that video that you took on your phone went viral and got millions of hits.
Yeah. 3.2 million at least. And that's just on Facebook. But it really got spread around everywhere. You could see the video on YouTube now. And it's titled Happy Star Wars New Year, Blow Up the Death Star at Midnight. Perfect timing, because it was perfect timing. The thing that made the video so great is that you have the atomic clock on the app on my phone. And my son Michael was shooting the television set with his phone. And he's shooting video of the television set. It's not like he's Elvis Presley or anything. He was pulling out a revolver and opening it up on our color TV. He was shooting video. So I put the atomic clock right underneath, so you see it all time out so perfectly, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. So that's what you want to do. You want to blow up the Death Star at midnight. And there's a special way you have to go about doing that. This is a McInerney family tradition that dates back probably to around 1999 is when I first started doing this thing with VHS. I was a young father, a young parent, and I had an infant, and we were not going out on New Year's Eve. That was a shock to my system. I'm a New Year's Eve party animal, of course. But, hey, you cross that threshold into parenthood, things do change, including staying home on New Year's Eve. So I said, well, you know what? Gosh darn, I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to do things that I really like eat steak and lobster and drink margaritas and watch Star Wars. And it got me thinking, how cool would it be if I could time out the original Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, and time it out just so perfectly that the Death Star explodes right at the stroke of midnight. So I did the math and I figured it out, and it worked. And it worked so well that first year we did picture-in-picture. So we had the ball dropping in the corner, or the countdown to midnight locally, and then we had the ball exploding in the main screen, and it timed out perfectly. So it became a family tradition. And then once I found myself online and participating in Star Wars podcasting, then I realized that this was a little family treasure that I wanted to share with everyone. And it's taken off like wildfire. And I think especially in the wake of the viral video from last New Year's Eve, I think more people will be doing it this year than ever before. I'm happy that a lot of people are doing it. And a lot of people look to alter the deal, or they look to customize. So they say, oh, okay, well, you're blowing up the Death Star in A New Hope. I'm going to blow up the Death Star in Return of the Jedi just to be different. But you know what? Here, nothing works as well as blowing up the Death Star in A New Hope. And I'll tell you why. Blowing up the Death Star in Jedi it's great. I mean, I love Jedi, don't get me wrong. But the problem with it is that there's a ton of downtime between the Death Star blowing up and the universe celebrating. A lot of people like to point, hey, look, the whole universe is celebrating in my New Year's Eve countdown. But you have to wait. There's all that doubt. You have to sit through Vader's funeral. Bummer. Han and Leia talking. He's my brother. Your brother? Well, what the hell? I just saw you. Okay. You have to wait for the celebration, and that defeats the whole purpose. Okay. Mm-hmm. Some people are like, hey, what about Star Killer Base in The Force Awakens? Take that. I am modern and progressive. And I say I appreciate the effort. But the only film that works for me at midnight is the original Star Wars. It works perfectly. Star Killer Base takes too long, and it kind of implodes instead of exploding. So you don't get that big pop. It's far less of an impact. Far less.
I totally agree in both cases. And that, me, I love Return of the Jedi. But I have, I've watched that film enough since being aware of this tradition, and I always think like, yeah, that's not a good New Year's pop. That's not a good stroke of midnight moment. That one in Empire Strikes Back or in Star Wars where you've got that tight close up of Peter Cushing is Tarkin right before it explodes. It doesn't get any better than that. The intensity.
It just builds and builds and builds, and then that big bang. It's the big bang. Immediately followed by no dialogue, celebration at Yavin Base, and then the big throne room bash of the century. What a great way to ring it. And you have that John Williams triumphant, the most triumphant Star Wars music that Williams ever composed, perhaps the most triumphant music he's ever composed, is that throne room scene, that music. It's such a great feeling. And the champagne is flowing. In my house, it's a tradition to make sure the first thing you eat in the new year is a green grape. And you're supposed to it's supposed to bring money to you.
Is that an Irish thing?
No, it comes from Wendy. So I was wondering if it's an Italian thing. Yeah. But I've never heard anyone talk about it before. But that's always our thing. So it's almost like when I crush down on that green grape, the Death Star is exploding again in my mouth. It's wonderful. What a great way to ring in the new year. I'm not kidding you. And some people have even tried to twist this around and incorporate Marvel Universe, and they want to time it out for when Thanos does his snap in Avengers Infinity War. I know I'm speaking a different language to you because you still have not seen what is probably the most earth-shaking superhero film to ever be released, and you're still sitting on the sidelines for that.
I gotta go see that.
You don't?
Is that at the theater?
No. God damn. All right, so blowing up the Death Star at midnight. So people are saying, "Oh, the Thanos snap." That's a bummer. That's a bummer, and I'm not going to get into it for why that's a bummer because Swank still has it. He's like the last guy in the universe who hasn't seen the Infinity War. So, the original Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. The directions for how to blow up the Death Star at midnight are available at rebelforceradio.com. I will make sure that that article is on our homepage so you can easily access it. The start times, digital edition is the newest. Like I said, I've been doing this since the VHS days. The digital edition, in my book, is the best way to time it out perfectly because there is absolutely no lag time from when you hit play to when because with a Blu-ray or a DVD, there's sometimes a little bit of lag time. So what I like to do is I like to put the disc in and I get the film all queued up. So the first thing you see when you hit play is that Lucasfilm logo. You're not sitting through any sort of FBI warnings or any kind of trailers. Right, you know, you have to. Accuracy is essential here. And you'll find that there are variants with the different mediums. There's not just one set time. There's a difference in all of them. So with the digital edition, you want to press play on New Year's Eve at 10:02 and 43 seconds. 10:02:43 p.m. Okay? And please don't send me an email saying, well, what time zone is that for? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. We've gotten them, folks. We've gotten them in the past. You know who you are. All right. All right. So, and then the DVD, of course, which is the special edition one. Make sure you're not using like
the despecialized.
The despecialized. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Or that one that
I love those.
Put out that has the original theatrical cuts. They're like real letter boxed and
yes,
it's like the size of a postage stamp in your middle of your TV.
It's non-anamorphic.
Yeah, right.
And the tech geeks were going ape. You know what? Crazy when that movie came out. It was like that. But all right, so that special edition DVD. You know, this is the one where Han shoots whenever. Special edition DVD. Press play at 10:02:48 p.m. Blu-ray disc. Press play at 10:02:42 p.m. So you see, there's a slight variance in seconds with each one, and you have to be extremely accurate. You have to know your machine and have it queued up. If you're using physical medium, have it queued up so that the first thing you see when you hit play is that Lucasfilm logo. But you might be dealing with some sort of lag or delay after you hit the play button when you're dealing with physical medium, depending on your actual unit. You would know best. It's like, you know your kids better than anyone else does. You know your Blu-ray disc player better than anyone else. So plan accordingly. I recommend strongly the digital edition. Maybe just for laughs, I'll do the old VHS one again this year. No. No. I mean, I would miss it by like a minute some years. There are some years when they'd be like, oh, Jim, you totally missed it. I said, listen, the next year does not start in this house until that Death Star blows up. People would be like, Happy New Year. No. Stop looking at clocks. We're on unofficial time now. Death Star is still, it's T-minus 10. Oh, so many good memories. But that's what you do when you're a parent and you have to stay home. I know a lot of people like to go out and party on New Year's. And if you do.
What's that like? I haven't done that in Jeez.
You know, we call that amateur hour sometimes because it's a lot of people are partying maybe harder than they're used to, and they're just be careful is all I'm saying. Be very safe.
Oh yeah, you're right. The people that I gotcha. Yeah,
that's why we say amateur hour.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a professional and I'm staying home, so figure that out.
Well, it is a great tradition. I did it I can't believe that it was just last year was my first time, but it was so much fun. And like I said, I got my daughter involved. We were having all kinds of fun. We were texting Jim back and forth and leading up to the big moment. So it's a great tradition to start in your house. So check it out. We'll have the details, rebelforceradio.com. The Death Star will explode at midnight.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
All right, of course, we're not only just looking at the year ahead, going into 2019, another big year for Star Wars as we allegedly close the books on the Skywalker saga. We'll find out if that's actually true, but nonetheless, Star Wars Episode 9 will be hitting theaters on December 20th, 2019. But we also take this opportunity to look back in the year that was. So we thought we would just take a little bit of time here on this week's very special holiday episode of Rebel Force Radio to look back at the year that was 2018 in Star Wars. And Jim, as I look back on this list, the one thing that I notice, I just see so much content coming out of the publishing arms at Lucasfilm. So much in the comics, so much going on in the world of novelizations, and both for adults as well as some of the junior stuff for the younger kids. One of the things I think we thought was going to happen, how naive of me, when the expanded universe became Legends, was that the publishing side of the storytelling in Star Wars was going to slow down a little bit. One of the problems we thought that we identified with the expanded universe of old was that it was too much, too soon. It wasn't special anymore. The novels and the storytelling was happening so rapidly, there was no time to make it an event. When we think back about, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, when we think back about Shadows of the Empire, when these were sort of events unto themselves. But 2018, just nonstop when it comes to the world of comic books and novels. What are your thoughts about, I know you certainly do a better job than I do keeping up with that stuff, but if you had to kind of point to some highlights in the world of Star Wars comic books in 2018, what would you be looking at?
Oh, yeah. You've heard me talk about it a lot of times over this past year on the show. It's the Marvel Darth Vader comic.
Yeah.
I think that's really been some great stuff, really capturing Darth Vader and a moment of Star Wars on the timeline that is really appealing to me as Vader grows into becoming the Dark Lord of the Sith post Episode 3. I think it's been great. And Charles Soule is the writer, and he's done a really good job creating really cool storylines. And for the most part, I think each issue has been a real winner. Unfortunately, that line wraps up this week with issue 25 and the conclusion of the Vader Mustafar Vader's Castle arc. And I'm not going to say a word about that comic on this show because it was just released today as this show is being recorded. I want people to have time to soak this one up if you're a big fan of that Vader line. And if you haven't read it yet, I strongly recommend checking it out. You can get issues of Marvel Darth Vader online at marvel.com. And it's definitely worth your read if you're interested in what was going on there.
Are there 2 Vader titles right now?
There was a first Vader run with Marvel that launched in 2015. And that, I can't recall how many issues that ran, but it was around 25 or whatever. And that featured Vader dealing with the fallout of the events from Star Wars A New Hope. Learning Luke Skywalker was the one who blew up the Death Star. And drawing a conclusion to the fact that this could be the son of his and Padme's. It was interesting, but it didn't hit its stride hard enough for me, and it just kind of fizzled out, that one did. This second run that started in 2017, featuring Vader post-Sith, this thing's been off the charts. I've really enjoyed each and every arc. They've all really been very good. One arc even featured Vader going through the Jedi library and having a showdown with Jocasta Nu. And Jocasta Nu has an ancient weapon, looks like a blaster. You insert your saber into it, and it shoots lightsaber blasts. I was like, this is insane. This is not, it's just, it worked. It just works for the comics medium. It does.
All right. Okay.
It does. In my book, it does. I think some people may have kind of been scratching their head. I know I can hear you scratching your head from here.
Well, Jason. Yeah, but I'm thinking of, Ezra Bridger. He had sort of that hybrid blaster / lightsaber weapon there for a while. We're not talking about something like that, are we?
No.
Does his sort of look like a staple gun?
Looked like a rifle, this one. It looked more like a rifle. And some ancient Jedi weaponry or something she had stashed.
Not the dark saber. Not the dark saber.
No. So that line, to me, that's been the highlight of publishing this year. There also was another spin-off line with IDW's Star Wars Adventures line where they did Tales from Vader's Castle. That came out last October and was sort of a ramp up to Halloween. It's just like scary stories in the Star Wars universe. Killer Ewoks, what have you.
All right. So there you go. Lots of stuff to choose from in the land of Star Wars publishing. January saw the release of some of the additional episodes of Forces of Destiny. We started seeing characters we saw Rose Tico in an episode. We saw the Leia Chronicles. We saw, of course, Rey. Forces of Destiny was something that it was clear that it was there to push a new toy line for Hasbro, a toy line that was geared more towards young girls. I think that it was a fine experiment in terms of the video content. My big problem, and this goes back to that first season of the Gendy series. I'm not a big fan of these like little minute and a half, 2-minute shorts. It is not enough time. That's a commercial. That's not enough time, in my judgment, to really do anything of any real significance. As soon as I get into it, it's over. It's like my love life.
Well, we didn't need to go that far, but hey, it's the last show of the year. Whatever. Let it all hang out. Some episodes felt like there was a little more meat on the bones than other episodes. I really am kind of fond of the a few Forces of Destiny episodes. One in which I think all original trilogy fans should search out. It's episode 23, The Path Ahead. And it features Luke in a training session with Yoda on Dagobah and R2. And it's just the three of them. And Mark Hamill is supplying the voice of Luke Skywalker in this episode. And it's just so cool to see a young Luke, animated Luke, and voiced by Mark.
All right, I'll go again.
This time, go with you, I will.
Really? Oh, great. It'll be easier if I can follow you.
No, not follow. Carry me, you will.
Carry you? Master Yoda, I can barely look out for myself up there.
They give him a little special sauce there in the sound mix to kind of make him sound a little younger, slightly pitched him up a little. But, Mark is, of course, a very talented voice actor himself, and maybe he can replicate himself. I've heard him try to replicate young Luke in the Robot Chicken sketches.
Turn to the dark side and join me.
I'll never join you! You killed my father!
No, Luke. I am your father.
That's not true! That's impossible!
It's impossible!
Yeah, you hear so much of old man Mark in there now. Because Mark has become such a character in himself.
Yeah.
Once he opened himself up to once he embraced his connection to Luke Skywalker and started doing things like conventions and more fan-friendly sort of activities, we've seen him grow into this media creature, just a pop culture character in his own right. And I love it. Because I think he's a great actor and he cracks me up. So that's the one you want to check out, though, with Forces of Destiny. Episode 23, The Path Ahead, with guest star Mark Hamill as the voice of Luke Skywalker.
Also, 2018 saw the end of Star Wars Rebels. And we had episodes like Jedi Knight and Doom premiere. Also, Wolves in a Door, A World Between Worlds, all of that. Some very heavy stuff that I think kind of changed the way that we look at the Force, particularly A World Between Worlds, and this ability to go sort of force walk back in time and pluck people out of a circumstance like Ezra was able to do with Ahsoka. Jim, we can debate whether or not that's for better or for worse, that sort of expansion of Force ability. But, we don't want to be totally closed off from new experiences and new ideas. But it does sort of, I think, in a lot of ways, open a Pandora's box where it seems like, well, then, nothing's forever. Anything could be changed. I don't know. I struggle with that one a little bit, but I'm not going to complain from the standpoint of leaving the series with Ahsoka Tano being alive and well, and perhaps showing up in some sort of future project.
The thing about the portals, and of course the portals is being something explored a little bit from the dark side of things with the Vader comic, but these portals, the end of Rebels, it felt like they were trying to create a Mortis type expansion on the mythology of the Force. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that with these portals, it's almost as if you are physically accessing the Force and going into it, and it's like this big auditorium. And it's
right.
That idea of actually physically entering into the realm of the Force. I mean, do people see Ezra? What, he just like disappears when he pushes on that rock? I'm going to have to go back and review Rebels a little more. Mm-hmm. I was getting a little burnt out on Rebels toward the end. Yep. And there was some great stuff going on with that series, too, that I think deserves a second look. So I might dig up that Blu-ray and give it a spin during the holidays, because I think it really deserves that. The real grand finale of Filoni's animated universe. Yep. Because in many ways, Rebels was a big extension of threads that were laid out for Clone Wars. And so that's why it really deserves me going back and looking at it. The thing that I always enjoyed the most about Mortis is my belief that the whole thing happened in a way of it really was a Force vision for Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. They never actually physically went to Mortis. There is no physical Mortis to go to. But you can exist within the realm when you're locked into the Force like these three were. And they came across, they actually saw the physical the physical shape of Mortis, that big pyramid on top of a pyramid that they encountered in space. But, I mean, even that in itself, was it physically there? No, I don't think so, because Yularen showed up, and he had his fleet with him, and they didn't see any sort of Mortis apparition in space. All of that stuff was the Force connecting and talking and dealing with these people who were really strong in the Force, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. So when you get to Ezra walking around in an auditorium and pulling people from real-life situations into the auditorium with him and changing the course of history, that is something that is truly not the Force communicating in a metaphorical sort of sense. This is people
it's quite physical.
Physically entering into the realm of the Force to control events in history.
You know, the thing that has sort of bothered me about the more that the Force becomes material is, to me, it flies in the face a lot of not just established religion and faith, but what's been established in Star Wars. When Yoda talks about luminous beings, are we, not this crude matter. Well, Yoda is saying that this doesn't matter. This shell is incidental. What really matters is the energy that we produce, that we manifest in the Force. So the more that, this was my issue with midichlorians. This is, now my issue with, plucking people out of, the space-time continuum, is that I think it creates a little bit too much reliance on the physicality of existence. Whereas I think the Force is really, should be more about the spirituality. Mm-hmm. But, Rebels wrapped up in 2000. It seems like a long time ago, but it was just this year.
I know,
all wrapped up in March.
Hey, listen, this discussion about the portals into the Force as introduced in Rebels, this is something I want to continue in 2019. I think this deserves a little more of our attention than we've given it thus far.
Yeah, that's fair. I think these last 5 episodes, starting with Wolves in the Door all the way through Farewell, we should rewatch those, because I haven't seen them since they originally aired.
Then again, those wolves, what are they? Like some manifestation of the Force on the physical realm once again? And who's seeing them and who isn't?
And why would they do that when they knew they were going to have those ice wolves in The Last Jedi?
Well, that's a fair question.
Some sort of connection.
Yeah, there is kind of a similarity and potential confusion between the two species. That's interesting. But those wolves were appearing and physically transporting Ezra and Hera, or no, not Hera, Kanan, right? Mm-hmm. Physically transporting them across the plains. That kind of connection with the Force is interesting. Can the Force physically manifest itself?
Arguably, yeah.
Is the Force a place you can go to physically?
Yeah,
all of you, not just sitting there on a rock on an island, thinking really hard, hard.
And I mean, and aren't we led to believe that Kanan himself ends up inhabiting one of those wolves and sort of becoming, there at the end?
That's true. Yeah, let's take a closer look at the Rebels finale, and we can jump on that in early 2019. Heck, we got a whole year of downtime until we get up to the streaming service, and then episode 9, and then we're going to be overwhelmed. So we'll never make it back to these cool conversations. And that's something I want to explore a little bit more.
Well, 2018 was also really the aftermath, if we can use that term, of The Last Jedi. We had the Last Jedi novelization was published in March, as well as the junior novel, and then the home video release later that month in March. And that, Jim, allowed us to take 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 20th viewings of the film. We got to sort of see what the novel might offer in terms of additional scenes, additional ideas, getting in the heads of the characters to try to make a little bit more sense of what we saw on the big screen. And, as I look back on the Blu-ray and as I look back on the novelization, the only thing that really comes to mind is, we saw a little bit more of Luke training Rey. We saw that third lesson that was cut from the film that ended up being kind of a bit of a prank that Luke played on Rey, as Rey thought that the I forget what those creatures were there on Octu, the Keepers, thought that they were being raided. She jumps to their defense, finds out they're just having a party. And, she ends up with egg on her face. And, Luke makes it some sort of kind of weird lesson about intervention, which made me think of like Star Trek and the Prime Directive and all of that. That's really the only contribution I can think of for the additional footage and the additional narrative that the book provided. Was there anything, when you think about those materials, that jumped out at you as far as something that, helped or even detracted from The Last Jedi?
Well, the book featured some interesting Force visions that Luke was experiencing right at the very beginning of the book, where he sees a different future for himself, where he has a wife.
Oh, right, yeah.
Anything like that. And that was kind of interesting thing. That was interesting to put things in perspective, at least as far as what's going on in Luke's head in The Last Jedi. Because I don't think we get enough of what's really going on in Luke's head in The Last Jedi. He speaks in very broad terms quite often. He doesn't really just cut right to the chase. And, we get the flashbacks and all that stuff. But, really talking to Luke, really hearing what's going on in Luke's head. And so that sort of applies. It was a dream he was having where he had this family. But he knew the dream was too strong. He knew it was the Force taking advantage of him during his downtime when he was, he couldn't just shut it off, and it was able to invade his subconscious. And he had this vision, and the vision was telling him things about what could happen in the future. Also interesting in the novel, at the very end, those Keepers refer to Rey as Luke's niece.
He'd been little trouble after that, though the same couldn't be said about his rude, destructive apprentice. The one he'd said was his niece.
What the hell? What?
What?
What? Yes.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember us even talking about that.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Huh.
Yeah, we discussed. It's been that kind of year with The Last Jedi. There's been some. We've had some really amazing analysis and conversations regarding that film. If you go back and listen to the first part of this year, some of our discussions, having John Marcoux stop by and give us a whole mythological breakdown of what's going on with Luke Skywalker as he sees it compared to the whole history of mythology and religion. I should say the whole history. That's putting a lot on Marcoux's shoulders right there. Just from what he knows, the
hero's journey.
He has a really great way of breaking things down, and he's a student of all of that sort of things, and Joseph Campbell and filmmaking and all of that. Those are great conversations we had. But as the year has gone on, there have been, a lot of the Rian Johnson posts and tweets and interviews and things like that have kind of given me a different perspective on the film a little bit. And I'm not really even saying in a good way. Some of it's almost like he just would reveal too much. I like leaving things a little more out there and up to us fans to provide analysis and breakdown. Lucas never really interfered with that. People would ask George Lucas for definitions about things with Star Wars, and he'd be like, it means what you want it to mean. He'd always put the ball back in your court. And that's what great creators do. They leave the interpretation of their art to the person who is consuming that artwork. And that's where art is at its most powerful, is when it can be interpreted in many different ways. If art doesn't have that flexibility, then it becomes agenda-driven.
And let's not forget, Mark Hamill himself went on the record by saying
this is not my Luke Skywalker.
I almost had to think of Luke as another character. Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker.
So Luke Skywalker is basically denouncing Luke Skywalker. If anyone involved with the production of The Last Jedi should be in a position to claim ownership of that character, it's Mark Hamill himself. And so with all the explanations and things like that, then I start to reassess original reactions I had to the artwork and start placing it into a different area of perspective that might not be one that I can necessarily appreciate. Pure honesty with that. And people say, well, why don't you be more specifically objective when you review George Lucas's films? Why don't you put them under the same amount of scrutiny? That's debatable, because we've been talking about these films for a long time, and if you go back and listen to our shows, there's a lot of scrutiny going on there with all kind of films. Even, yes, the Holy Trilogy, the original trilogy. Oh, but yes, bow down and worship the original trilogy, of course. But everything has its flaws. The only thing is that when George Lucas was putting out his films, like especially the much maligned prequel trilogy, he wasn't taken to the Twitter and raising holy hell about all kind of... I mean, if anything, George was dealing with it himself. They said Jar Jar was racist. They said the Nemoidians were racist. They said everything in that film was racist. So it was just a different time, I guess, and George wasn't as defensive as we've seen other artists in this age of social media act.
Yeah.
Again, my opinion, folks. I'm not telling anyone how to think or feel or anything like that. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that.
So it's colored my retrospective look at The Last Jedi. Again, and I will say a million times that I watched it and I had a good time watching it recently. And Jason, I would like you to watch it. I think we all sort of need that kind of, let's take a look at it again.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. Here's the thing, and this is something that I think a lot of the critics of The Last Jedi miss because they are so angry about it, is that I still find it immensely enjoyable. I don't sit there and watch it and
get angry.
Yeah, right, and get angry about it. I love criticizing it.
Yep.
I love praising it where it's worthy. I wouldn't have spent the last 13 years of my life doing a Star Wars podcast if I didn't like debating and talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything there is about Star Wars. If you love something, you even love when it falls short. You don't stop loving your favorite football team because they lose a bunch of games. I mean, I live in Cleveland. I know this very well. That's great. That's good. Right? I mean, you don't stop loving Star Wars.
Right.
And you don't start rooting for it to fail.
No, you root for
just
the home
because
team.
You don't love absolutely.
That's right.
But it goes the other way too, where it's like, I got a lot of miles on these tires. I've been a Star Wars fan for 40 years. 40 out of longer than that. 41 out of my 41 years, I've been a fan. And I don't need to apologize for the fact that I might have a few issues with it here and there. It still makes me a fan. Don't be, asking me to turn in my fan card because I might have a difference of opinion with how, certain things were handled in these movies.
Yep.
If I had to, well, look, we've talked about it ad nauseum. What we're doing here is we're looking back at
the year and
2018,
I think that a big thing, if you look back at Star Wars, the year that was 2018, something that does need to be addressed is the fallout from The Last Jedi, because that happened all in 2018.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine. That's fine. It's been a polarizing year for fandom. It's been a polarizing year for Star Wars. And so we can just hope nothing but better things are going to happen in 2019. So that is not going to close the book on The Last Jedi. No, sir. That's the thing that cracks me up. Why are you still talking about that film? It's been a year. Hey,
why are we still talking about the original Star Wars from 1977, A New Hope? That's been 42 years.
Right.
So, of course, we're going to keep talking about it. If we don't talk about it, we don't have a show.
All right, what else happened? Okay, of course, The Last Jedi, home video release. James Cameron had a show called The Story of Science Fiction, or The History of Science Fiction. And that was, I believe, on AMC. George Lucas was featured on that. And there's some great highlights. I thought I was able to find one here. Let's see if there's any way I might be able to pull this over for us to listen to.
I watched a few episodes of that. One great episode was focused on aliens. And, of course, both George Lucas and James Cameron know a lot about aliens. And Cameron asked Lucas where he got his inspiration when it came down to creating those aliens. And George said, just go to the aquarium. I swear to God, he said that. I swear to God. It's a trap.
I think this might be from that interview. Let's listen here real quick.
Science fiction, you got two branches. One is science, and the other is social.
Right.
I'm much more of the 1984 kind of guy.
Sure.
Than I am
THX 1138.
Be honest with the spaceship guy.
Yeah.
The spaceship. I got into spaceships out of cars.
Yeah.
I love cars. I love going fast. So, I like spaceships.
Yeah.
But it isn't the science, aliens, and all that kind of stuff that I get focused on. It's the how do the people react to all those things.
All right, and of course, later that month, Solo: A Star Wars Story opened in theaters. Jim, we had a wonderful time there in my own backyard, Solo in Ohio. We did a big live podcast at the beautiful Playhouse Square Performing Arts Center in the Kennedys Cabaret, and we filled the place and had a wonderful time. And the night before that, we actually saw the film. And, I just keep playing back in my head something that you said right here on the show a couple weeks ago as I was lamenting the fact that here we are, it's December, we're approaching the holidays and no new Star Wars movie. And you said, boy, I tell you what, I'd like to be gearing up to go see Solo in the theater right about now. And what that did was it just kind of reminded me of really what a kind of a lost opportunity that movie was. I think if there would have been a full year between it and The Last Jedi, I think the story would have been markedly different. Now, if we have time, we've got a couple of end-of-year stories that are sort of tell two different tales of Solo: A Star Wars Story. But, from this point of view, looking back on it, it's really a fun movie to go back and watch, and I don't see how anyone could be that disappointed in it, to tell you the truth. It's really quite good.
It's great immersion into the Star Wars universe, and it's awesome to see stormtroopers and droids and everything that makes Star Wars is represented in that film. And, barring the Force and lightsabers, you get a small little taste when Darth Maul is big balling it there in that hologram. But other than that, it's fairly void of the mythology, the spirituality edge of the mythology specifically.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And, it stands on its own. It definitely deserves your attention as a Star Wars fan, as a fan of Han Solo. It's one of Chewbacca's best movies. Chewbacca gets a lot of love in this movie.
He does, and Jonas doing a great job. His first movie, inheriting the entire role, I believe. Right? Did he do all of Last Jedi, or was Peter doing a little bit of that Last Jedi work?
Peter did a little bit. The times I can really recognize Peter is in that last scene in The Force Awakens in the cockpit when Rey and Chewie are flying off to Ahch-To to go find Luke. She looks over at Chewie, and Chewie sort of nods his head at her. That's clearly Peter Mayhew. That's clearly Peter. But I think his actual appearance in costume is very, very rare throughout the film.
Mm-hmm. Even what about Last Jedi?
Oh, Peter wasn't in that at all.
He wasn't in that at all. No. Okay, so Force Awakens was it for Peter.
Yeah, that was kind of just like a legacy move for them to show appreciation to Peter for all he's done over the last 4 decades, creating that character on screen, having Peter there to occasionally give Jonas a little tip here and there as to Wookiee style and how it works. And I think that's invaluable. They brought back Peter when they were animating Chewbacca in the Clone Wars. And there was the big Wookiee Trandoshan showdown that Ahsoka found herself in the middle of. And I think that was, I want to say that was near the end of season 4. But that was really great episodes and so well animated. And the Chewbacca presented in those Clone Wars episodes were just a dead-on recreation of the on-screen character of Chewie. You didn't see that all the time in Clone Wars. The R2 in Clone Wars didn't seem screen accurate to me, nor did the 3PO. There were liberties taken for the realm of animation, and of course, I'm not criticizing anyone for that, but there was extra care taken with Chewie just to make sure he was so exact and accurate. And they brought in Peter, and they had Peter walking around and stuff, and the animators are looking at him. And they went to the ranch, into the archives, and dug up some old Chewie costumes and stuff, and masks.
It was like watching those Disney animators working on Lion King going to the zoo. The way they were studying Peter Mayhew, like he was some sort of, exhibit. But they wanted to get every little nuance down as best they could while they had that opportunity.
And then he would offer information to him too, like Chewie would kind of tilt his head to the left, a little bit. And so I love that respect given to the legacy actors who created the legendary characters. I really do.
Now, Solo, of course, also featured a big soundtrack release. John Powell making his debut as a Star Wars composer, but it did feature an original theme from the maestro himself, John Williams. Jim, when you think back to, we were all excited about hearing Michael Giacchino's soundtrack for Rogue One.
That was close. And that was probably your 5th alternate way of saying that guy's last name.
Giacchino? What did I say? Giacchino?
It's Giacchino.
Giacchino, okay. All right.
Michael Giacchino.
Michael Giacchino. We were all, of course, waiting for that. Now we've got John Powell throwing his hat in the ring. When you look back at the Solo soundtrack and you compare it to the work of Giacchino, whatever. Giacchino, fine. When you compare the two, what are your thoughts?
I think the soundtrack to Rogue One stands out. It stands on its own.
Yeah, I do too.
And the story behind it is so cool because he was under such pressure and the deadline was impossible. But yet he created, I think, a Star Wars classic worthy of sitting up on the shelf next to the John Williams soundtracks. I really think Giacchino did a fantastic job. Amazing. Because, of course, they were going with their original pick for soundtrack composer was
Desplat. Yeah.
And so they bailed on him.
I think it's Duplat.
Yeah. And they bailed on him. There might have been a moment where they were out at sea for a little while, not knowing what they were going to do, despite the fact that the clock was ticking. And Giacchino just came in out of nowhere.
Well, by way of J.J. Abrams, I think.
Well, of course. Of course, there's the connection. And Giacchino was a stormtrooper in The Force Awakens, another cameo.
There you go.
There's a pop culture cameo for you. Not exactly an A-lister, but certainly one when it comes to film composition. And Giacchino did. What a great job he did with that Rogue One. So, Under the Gun, I think, composed everything within under a month. Like a matter of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It was such a tight schedule. You can look up the story online if you want, but I don't have all that information right in front of me. I'm just talking about what I remember from when it all went down. And it was an amazing, highly pressurized situation that guy was in. Now, he did have prior experience composing Star Wars because he did work for the Disney parks.
Mm-hmm.
And the ride there that you always turn blue on.
Star Tours.
Star Tours. He did the new music. And it's very Williams inspired and everything. So, perfect guy. Bring him back is what I say. Now, no knock on the Solo guy. Okay, we're talking about the year that was, and I'm going back to 2016 talking about that because I'm still just, impressed by that.
But you can't talk about John Powell, I don't think, and Solo without thinking about Giacchino.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't given the Solo soundtrack the time of day. Why is that? I love music. I love Star Wars. Part of the overall Star Wars experience is soaking in all the different mediums that are connected to it. And one of my favorite ones is the soundtrack. Why have I not taken a deep dive into that soundtrack?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe it's because I'm still just like trying to decipher The Last Jedi so much that like Solo is almost like that bratty little brother who's running up after you when you're trying to hang out with your friends and you're going to go out and hang out with your friends and you got the little kid is coming up, he wants to hang with you. It's like, I don't have time. We're going to go meet some girls and there's a band we're going to go see and stuff. I mean, I love you, but I can't spend time with you right now. And that's how I feel about Solo. I love you, Solo, A Star Wars Story. But I can't spend time with you. I'm still trying to figure out this Last Jedi stuff. This is adult crap I'm going through here. Oh, my God. The stress. See, that's 2018 is just like, it's just a big ball of stress when it comes to Star Wars. Just being someone who loves Star Wars and wants to spend the most time with it, I just can't.
It was a tough year. I mean, it was a really tough year. I mean, it just went places that it just shouldn't have gone, quite honestly. It's we as Star Wars fans should be able to have our favorites and our least favorites and, be able to talk about these movies like we've always talked about them. I mean, there's no difference between, me or you not liking a character in a Rian Johnson Star Wars film any different than somebody in 1983 hating the Ewoks because they were just there to sell toys. There's no difference. Nobody was going around calling those people deplorable names. Anyway, I don't want to get off on all of that.
Listen, all I have to say about that, and let's just, think reasonably and rationally.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever said it was going to be easy following up George Lucas when it comes to Star Wars. No one ever said that was going to be easy. Huge shoes to fill.
Well said. Well said. Another big moment was in July. Dave Filoni at San Diego Comic-Con announced that Clone Wars was saved and that there would be a revival of the series and that it would premiere on the Disney streaming service. We now know as Disney Plus. That was a huge moment. I think it was a real full circle moment for us, Jim, because we've talked about this on the show many times, but if you go back and listen to those episodes of Rebel Force Radio, we were tuned in to what was going on. We knew that Clone Wars was not long for the world. We hoped that there might be an opportunity to change it. And a lot of people called you specifically paranoid, saying that, there's no way. The Clone Wars is definitely coming back. It's too popular. You were saying, look, I think there's problems out there. I think this is going to be dropped. And by the time everyone else sort of caught up to what you were talking about, it was too late.
Yeah. We were hearing whispers from within. And the people who were letting us know were just doing it purely out of love for the series and fear that it was going to be stripped away from Star Wars fans. And it really was. It was very abrupt, and no one was really ready for it. I was trying to prepare people and trying to develop some online support, and actual physical support by suggesting people write in and call us, and we sent in a bunch of voicemails and stuff in their direction, and just fan support, good old-fashioned grassroots ground swell of support for the Clone Wars, and it was heard. It was heard because then they put into production the Clone Wars Lost Missions, and that was honestly the greatest thing that they could have done at that. They could have just pulled the plug on the whole thing, put it all on the shelf, like they did with Star Wars Detours, which still sits up on the shelf. Maybe we'll see that in 2019 as part of the Disney Plus streaming service. But, looking back, it was a wild time, the Clone Wars. And then now to hear that have that announcement over the summer that Clone Wars is going to return next year on the streaming service, wow, that's really great. And I do think we'll get an announcement about Star Wars Detours as well. Not that I really even care any other, I just don't even care. I'm more curious about the Clone Wars. I want to know if this is something that could actually create the foundation for a Clone Wars revival where it comes back. I thought it would take 10 years for that to happen. I really did. I'm surprised to see that.
You mean 10 years from when it ended?
Yeah.
Because it is going to be about, by the time it premieres, about 12 years from when the series started. We just had the 10th anniversary, and that, in fact, that was actually the occasion that prompted them to make the announcement about it coming back. So it's 10 years since the premiere.
It's been off since 2013. It's been off the air, and then they had the streaming with the Netflix, with the Lost Missions, and then everyone jumped on board with Clone Wars once it hit Netflix. Best thing that ever happened to that show. Next to us, of course, in our grassroots groundswell of support. But no, Netflix was huge and incredible, and really helped establish a future for Clone Wars. And of course, the fans, the fan base, always staying loyal. People like Ashley Eckstein, always out there in the public eye, doing things with her universe. These are things that have kept Clone Wars alive. So that announcement, while shocking, was not surprising. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, of course they're bringing it back. We weren't expecting it. Shock. But no surprise because it makes common sense. There's still, I think there's still gas in that tank. Now, we will be dealing with a post-George Lucas Clone Wars.
Which makes me nervous.
Sure. But we
potentially
have
even a post-Dave Filoni
Clone
Wars. We have no confirmation about his involvement.
This is true, isn't it?
Yeah, he announced it.
I think we might there might have been some indication out there that Dave was working on it. Yes, there is, because I saw a photo of him with core cast members, and it was posted on social media. I don't know whose account it was, but it was Filoni in the recording studio with Matt Lanter, Ashley Eckstein, who else? D. Bradley Baker was in the shot. Who am I missing? But yeah, that's a fairly recent shot. So he definitely has been involved in current Clone Wars production.
Okay.
Busy guy.
Yeah. 2018 also saw the passing of famous Star Wars producer Gary Kurtz as he passed away in September earlier this year. Gary was a huge part of Star Wars as well as The Empire Strikes Back, and his contributions are legend, so it was sad to say goodbye to him. Someone I don't think we ever got a chance to interview, did we, Jim,
Nope.
here on the show?
Nope. No, not at all. Ran into him a couple times, just sort of behind the scenes, but never really had any sort of dialogue with him or anything. It was just like, wow, there's Gary Kurtz. How cool.
Yeah,
but,
right.
I recommend people check out Star Wars Influences number 30, Remembering Gary Kurtz, where Paul and myself, we look back at his career. And so he was truly a guy who had a lot to do with making Star Wars what it was and getting those original 2 films into the can,
Yeah.
And you can tell, I mean, there just seems to be a more natural synergy between Star Wars and Empire in relation to any other of the films that have come out since then. It just seems like Star Wars and Empire, it's like peanut butter and jelly. And then Jedi is just like, there's just something about Jedi that, to me, has always looked a little different. Like, I can tell they're not in Tunisia when it comes to the Jabba Palace stuff.
Right.
I just know they're not in Tunisia.
Chewie's flock of seagulls' hair as well.
No, I don't. Listen, I like that. I think they should have given Chewie a different hairstyle for each film. Like a mohawk in one film, a flat top, a Mr. T look. They should have switched them up, but they would have sold a ton more action figures, let me tell you. But and then sometimes you could be like Bieber, and what he's got.
Okay, so then in October, 2018, such a unique year, 2 Star Wars films. Last Jedi was technically not 2018, but was still in theaters in 2018, along with Solo. But you also had the end of Rebels and the beginning of Resistance. So you had 2 Star Wars films, 2 Star Wars animated series. Resistance premiered on October 7th, 2018. And boom, right away, episode. And I got to confess, outside of Lego Freemakers, this is the first Star Wars television anything that I've not followed. I watched about the first 3 or 4 episodes, and there just wasn't enough for me to, I can't say that I won't, find some time over the holiday break to say, yeah, maybe I should at least catch up on maybe the last couple. I know Leia made an appearance there at the end, and Poe comes back into it. That's the idea. That's enough to bring me back into it a little bit, but there just wasn't enough happening. It was just like the TV show where nothing happens.
The last thing you want to have occur in a Star Wars production of any level is a feeling of claustrophobia. I get claustrophobic on the platform. And there have been some episodes where they've left the platform, and those episodes are standout episodes. The last one of 2018, episode 11, Station Theta Black. Right, that was a good one because they got off the platform and they're flying around, and it's all kind of good stuff. You want Star Wars to feel big and broad. It was a big problem, I should say big problem, looking back at Star Wars Rebels Season 1. But I did note that when we talk about the episodes, people were starting to feel a little bit of Lothal fatigue. Like how I
remember those days.
Still on the same planet now, and we're 20 episodes in. It started to wear on people a little bit because I think it's important for Star Wars to always spread its wings in its stories and take you into the stars. That's where the wars should be, not on a grassy plain somewhere over and over and over again, and not on some refueling platform in the middle of an ocean. We don't even know anything about the planet they're on. Is it completely water covered? And the platform is the only thing there? I mean, they haven't even gone to other platforms, for crying out loud.
It's very, very small. It's a very small. I like the animation style. I know that was a big, that was a contentious thing when it first started, showing clips and all of that. I like the animation style quite a bit. I like the flexibility of not being, in that 3D CGI environment where you got to have all these different models and it's so expensive to create new looks for characters. I like the traditional sort of flatter 2D animation. because of the fact that it could potentially change up so quickly. But yet now, story-wise, you don't even have any need for that. Whereas, with the previous shows, it would have been nice to be able to show the characters in different outfits and maybe evolve the looks a little faster because the story was much more fast-paced. In the case of Resistance, it's like they might as well be, CG models because ain't nothing happening with these characters.
Well, I mean, it is, based in CG, the way they animate it. It's just a different...
Well, you know what I'm saying. It's they can move a lot faster with this style of animation.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that because there have been a repetition of the same characters, even in the background and everything, in each and every episode. You'll be like, oh, there's that guy again. And then there's that random Hoth trooper that's walking around. He comes up to the bar, he has a drink and walks away. It's like, dude, why are you dressed for Hoth out here on this fueling platform in the ocean? But there he is. I want to know more about that guy. Who is the Hoth trooper hanging out on the Resistance platform? There's probably some explanation for me that will clear it all up. But, oh, no, he's not a Hoth trooper. What you're actually seeing there is like, no. What I'm seeing there is a Hoth trooper. That's what I see. That's what, I've been a fan for 42 years. These old eyes see a Hoth trooper. You're going to be hard-pressed to explain to me. I think we're really, kind of shifting into the Archie Bunker phase of our fandom.
We may be. And
don't tell me what Star Wars should be, where it should be, how it should happen. I know. No, I don't know how that's all going to shake out. Yeah, I'm sure we'll do some soul searching over the holidays, and we'll come back in with a fresh perspective for 2019. That's what the new year is all about.
That's right. Also, let's see, November there, mid-November, we lost Stan Lee. And you're saying, well, what does he have to do with Star Wars? Well, Stan Lee was very instrumental in the Star Wars license going to Marvel back in the 70s.
He was there. He heard Sir Alec Guinness was going to be in the film. And he's like, oh, yeah. Give it the green light. Guinness. Give it the green light, baby.
Something that went by me, and I don't believe we talked about it on the show, but in November there, towards the end, Gloria Katz passed away. One half of the script doctor duo of William Hayek and Gloria Katz worked on American Graffiti with George Lucas, worked on THX, and did some uncredited work on the screenplay for Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
So true, and really became fans of the Hayeks when I grabbed a copy of Star Wars The Annotated Screenplays. This came out in the late 90s and was really the first publicly available breakdown outside of the internet. Of course, the earlier drafts for the Star Wars films leaked to the internet real early on. It was like one of the first Star Wars things I ever saw on the internet was the original draft for Star Wars by George Lucas. Those scripts were everywhere, and they still are everywhere online. You can go look them up, StarWarsWithAZ.com. Check it out. I love that website. But this book, Star Wars The Annotated Screenplays, you have an author, Lauren Bozaru, who worked at Skywalker Ranch and had access to all of these drafts, even handwritten notes from George Lucas about developing the script for the original Star Wars. Actually, this goes all the way through the entire trilogy. But when we're thinking about the Hikes, Gloria Katz and Willard Hike, her husband, they wrote all of the revisions, the most significant dialogue contributions were written by them, and they all ended up in a revised fourth draft. And they're in the Annotated Screenplays book. You should check it out if you have access to
one of the very best books.
Yeah, if you have access. It was the Bible for the longest time until J.W. Rinsler had his way at Skywalker Ranch. But this book, what's great is it takes you through the script, and it actually applies asterisks to each line that was supplied by the Hikes, Gloria Katz and Willard. Things like when Luke says, well, not unless you can alter time, speed up the harvest, or teleport me off this rock. And then 3PO says, I don't think so. I'm only a droid and not very knowledgeable about such things. Not on this planet, anyway. I mean, they really added a lot of the character stuff. You know, George Lucas was very responsible for giving the motivations and history to these characters and a lot of, most of their dialogue. But the Hikes punched up this script.
Gloria was credited also with punching up a lot of Princess Leia's dialogue in particular.
Yeah.
That was one that that really resonated with her. So some of that sassy dialogue that is so associated with Carrie Fisher there in that original film came from Gloria. I believe she was about 70, I think 76 when she passed away, but certainly a loss. And excuse us for missing that. That just happened there at the end of November, right after Thanksgiving, around the 25th.
Oh, you know what? Here's a good one. And we're actually going to play the audio from the film here because it's one of the greatest Han Solo moments of all time.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
We're sending a squad up.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
We're in conversation anyway. Look, we're gonna have company!
Yeah, that scene right there is one that you wouldn't even think that it was ever written on a page. It feels so natural that for all I know, it could have been a Harrison Ford, on set improv moment, but it's not. It's thanks to the genius of the Hikes. So rest in peace, Gloria. Thank you for all the great funny lines in Star Wars. Too bad you couldn't have worked on the prequels. Anyway, all right. Well, that's it. That's my statement on 2018. It was probably one of the most unique years as a Star Wars fan. A lot of content, a lot of Star Wars storytelling, and let's face it, a very fractured fan base.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
An emotional roller coaster for sure. And still in a good place, though, going into 2019 in relationship to Star Wars. I still love it. And I was really thankful, Jason, that we could just break all this down and talk about the Star Wars that was presented out in front of us and avoid a lot of the controversies and Bob Iger statements and all this and that, and just really concentrate on the Star Wars that was when it comes to 2018 and the things that fans were presented by Lucasfilm. And that was a great rundown right there. I don't think there's anything we left behind. If we did, let us know. Show at rebelforceradio.com. Let us know what you thought was your highlight for 2018. And maybe we can run through some highlights that you guys have on an upcoming episode of RFR in 2019, as we can continue to look back at 2018 and go, oh my God, thank God we made it. So, yeah, the Star Wars, the year that was.
Got a couple more things for you before we wrap up the show.
Rebel Force Radio.
You've already made that Star Wars reference.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars parody!
All right, Star Wars in pop culture. Jim, what do you got for us here? Based on the show notes, I have no idea what this might be.
Okay, this is every little bit of Star Wars in pop culture that we didn't get to this year, and it kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
Uh-huh. You don't get much bigger than superheroes and Superman and Supergirl. Supergirl, big hit show on, what is that, the CW now? I think it's on CW. Yeah. And I guess there was I haven't watched this show, although I'm a big fan of, what's her name? I remember she was on Glee. She also took a turn out on Broadway just last summer. I believe she was playing the part of Carole King in the Carole King story. Beautiful.
You're talking about Supergirl herself?
Supergirl herself, yeah. Her name's escaping me.
It's not escaping me. I know who Supergirl is.
As you Google it.
Yeah. I'm just, I can't believe I punched in Supergirl. And
I remember she's got an odd last name. The last name, I think, there's something about it that's.
Her name is Melissa Benoist. Benoist. Who cares?
Is it Benoit?
No, I can't say.
No, it's Benoist. Benoist. I think it's Benoist.
Benoist.
Hey.
Be nice to her. She might kick your ass. She's Supergirl.
Those bagels, they're very benoist.
Hey. So Supergirl is... DC is going to dip their toes into the Star Wars universe.
Wow.
So, corporate synergy be damned. Okay, Marvel, I'm looking at you. Here comes DC. Your kryptonite playing around with Star Wars now. How do you feel about that? Thank God Stan's not around to see this. But here it is. It's Season 3, Episode number 23. Recent episode of Supergirl. I think this aired sometime in the last month or so. But you get a nice Star Wars reference here.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
I assume that's some sort of film reference.
We never showed you Star Wars? Not a single Star Wars?
A single Star Wars.
So Supergirl showing that Marvel is not the only comic book line that can play around with Star Wars. We have DC. Boy, that's a violation almost, I think, if you're Marvel. You know?
Yeah?
Yeah. You're like, Supergirl's talking Star Wars? No, it's fine. Star Wars is too big for any sort of corporate entity. This is pop culture reference time, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars belongs to the universe.
Hell yeah.
Not just
say it loud, say it loud.
Those suits over there at Marvel, Disney, Lucasfilm. Come on.
It's down with those suits. Hey, it even goes way back to the original Knight Rider. That's right, the Hoff. David Hasselhoff. Check it in right here, right now. Star Wars and pop culture. We got the Hoff in the house. We're going to play a clip from Knight Rider. Not just any Knight Rider. The pilot episode. The very first episode of Knight Rider features a Star Wars reference in a most incredibly historic moment for the show. It's when the Hoff sits down in the kit for the very first time. And there's a Star Wars reference.
Welcome aboard the Knight 2000.
Thank you. What's all this? Looks like Darth Vader's bathroom.
That's it. But it's so profound. Darth Vader's bathroom.
What? Darth Vader's bathroom is a Trans Am?
Can we hear that one more time,
please?
Welcome aboard the Knight 2000.
Thank you. What's all this? Looks like Darth Vader's bathroom.
Why did they call it the Knight 2000? I thought it was called the Kit.
Yeah, it's the Knight 2000 was Kit. That was the.
The Kit is the nickname for Knight 2000.
Yeah, Kit was the. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, at very first, the nickname was Darth Vader's bathroom.
Well,
and so you have to wonder
I don't know how they would have carried that through the series.
I know, that's a shame they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure it out. Like, what would Darth Vader's bathroom be like? Is it like that meditation thing he sits in where it's and the crane lifts the clamshell up and down and he sits in there and does it? Is that what Vader's doing when Piet walks in?
I don't know. I feel like that some of the tie-in authors have tried to answer this in, grisly detail about Darth Vader's bathroom habits. Haven't we heard this before in some of the expanded universe?
I think so. I wonder what it would be like in Darth Vader's bathroom.
What?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this was the ladies.
I'm sorry, I confused the symbol with my cloak. It looks like a dress from behind.
I'll leave you to it. Don't worry.
I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. Oh, and it stinks in here. Oh, Vader. What?
Looks like Darth Vader's bathroom.
What?